welcome. I'm Eleanor Burns. I'm celebrating this year. It's my 25th anniversary with Quiltin' a Day. Well, let's travel back to 1978 when we were paying 42 cents for a loaf of bread and laughing over All in the Family, an Emmy-winning TV series. Well, this is how we looked in 1978. This is my husband, Bill. Orion is celebrating his 3rd birthday. Grant was just 5, and here I am right here. I look very young. Well, Bill encouraged me to write a book to go along with my students' favorite class, making the log cabin quilt. Well, Bill was in law school, so it seemed like a good plan to supplement the budget. Well, we worked hard all year, pairing my writing with his illustrations. And by December, we had a book. We had to make a log cabin quilt in a day, ready for photocopying and comb binding. Look at that. Well, this is my first log cabin quilt I made with the traditional red center. I made a 3.5-inch center, and then I did 2.5-inch strips on the sides. There's 3 yellows on the light side, and then on the dark side, there's 3 different blues. Now, each fabric is used twice in the block. Well, money was tight in those days, so this fabric was given to me in exchange for babysitting. And the amazing thing is, this quilt still isn't finished. Bet you have some of those around too, don't you? Well, do you remember the 1970s? We had avocado green and harvest gold kitchen appliances. And oh, remember those rust and brown shag carpets? Well, it seemed like I could only make rust and brown quilts. This is one that I had displayed in my home for many years. It's a good thing I could get off rust and brown. And now, 25 years later, I'm still stripping. Well, this is my latest quilt. It's called the Quarter Log Cabin. It's also made from 2.5-inch strips or 2.5 strips for 25 years. Now, it's different from the regular log cabin with the block built off of the corner square. This is queen size, and my cousin Carol Ann Slepik did the beautiful quilting on her long arm. If you turn it over and look at the back, you can really see her magnificent quilting. She's got a vine going along in the border right here, and then she stitched feathers in the log cabin blocks. Well, in this series, I have 14 quilts to show you. Each one has 2.5 strips to celebrate my 25th anniversary. So let's start the party with the Quarter Log Cabin. Teresa Barnes made this beautiful 16-block wall hanging. Color family number 1 is the green, and that makes up the star. And then color family number 2 is the red, the very center, and the corners in that cheery red. Well, then she did some free motion machine quilting in a triangular shape on the blocks, and then that wonderful cabling on the border. It's just beautiful. Well, these are the fabrics that she used. These are the reds. There are 5 different reds in 5 different values. And then you go ahead and repeat one of the reds or even a new one for the corner right here. And then the 5 different greens and perhaps a 6th one for the corner or one of the other ones. Now, when you're selecting your fabrics, remember to vary the scales of your prints. This one reads solid from a distance. This one is a beautiful large scale print. And then we have a medium scale and some small scale prints. And when you're selecting your fabric, also remember that you might want to pick out a touch of the other color family in each one of the prints. Well, both color families use the same 5 backgrounds, also with varying scales of prints. And look at this, are we lucky? Each one has a touch of red and green in it. This is fabric called caramel, just so pretty it looks good enough to eat. Well, you know, back in the 70s, I think life was freer. At least I felt freer because I tore all my strips. How easy is that? Now, all you needed was a good pair of scissors, and I just line up my fabric on the edge of a ruler. You just take a nick on the selvage, nick every 2.5 inches across there, just straighten the edge of it, get rid of it. Only problem is, look at all of these strings. And then you just tear selvage to selvage, not only strings, but lots of pressing on these strips. But life was easy, and it was fun to do. Well, then Janet Stalker gave me a rotary cutter, and I'll tell you, that changed my life. So easy, you can just cut up a quilt in a matter of minutes. Well, let me just pull out one of these pieces, and I'll show you how. Okay, you can just open it up so that it has the fold on one edge. Salvages are together here. If it's already straight on that left edge, you can lay it on your cutting mat. I think the favorite ruler is the 6x24 because it reaches the whole length of that fabric. And I put a piece of glow tape at the 2.5-inch mark so I can just drop it on there easily every time. And I like to just hold my ruler stable, put one anchor finger off, and you just start down here with your cutter. And if you want, walk your fingers halfway up and cut that strip. So it's pretty easy to do to get perfectly straight strips. Well, then they came up with another type of ruler. And this is probably my favorite. Goes even quicker. You just take your fabric, fold it into 4. So line up the selvage edges with the fold right down here. And the ruler has little plastic slots on it so that you can go ahead and put your knife edge right in there and cut across. Okay, line up first the 0 right across the bottom on the fold. Leave a little extra sticking out past this 0 so you can trim it off and straighten it. Let me show you. Just put your cutter right in that slot and just cut away from you. Now I put tape again every 2.5 inches. Gosh, you know, you get talking. So easy to forget where you're going. So if you just put that tape in, you can cut it quickly. And then remove, and you've got perfectly straight strips. Well, let me cut all of my strips, and I'll show you how to sew the blocks. I'm stripping my way right into this. This is an example of color family number 1 block. You start right here with the corner square, and you see the 5 backgrounds all lined up on one side, 5 greens on the second side. You use each fabric only once. Well, so I don't get confused with these 11 fabrics, I line them up in sewing order. You start right here with the corner, and then you have first background, first dark, second background, second dark, and so on down, working in pairs until you get to the outside edge. Well, I'm going to start with my corner square, my first background, place them right sides together, and sew them with a perfect 1/4 inch seam. You know, when I started in the 70s, it was so hard to get a perfect 1/4 inch. I'd use a magnetic seam guide, maybe a piece of adhesive strip, whatever, and it usually wasn't perfect even yet. Well, now the manufacturers are making these great 1/4 inch feet so that you can just line them right up on the edge. Can't go any further past a 1/4 inch. I'm using 15 stitches to the inch or a number 2 setting on a computerized sewing machine. Now, just a half a strip is enough to make 8 blocks. So you should decide what your layout's going to be so you know how many of these squares you have to make. Okay, set the seam with the first background on the top, and then just open, press right into it so there's no folds. And oh yes, I do like steam. Now, take this and cut it into 2.5 inch segments, as many as you need for your particular layout, and there are just so many different ones. Okay, I like to cut with a 6-inch square ruler. It's just a convenient size. Just line that up on the grid, square off that end, get rid of it, and then line up the ruler at 2.5 inches and cut right across there. And at this time, This piece should be 4.5 inches. If you have a 4.5 inch piece, you are in good shape. I'm just going to cut 3 just to show you the technique. And then turn them over, take this, get rid of it. Well, you know, throwing fabric is my signature. I started that, 15 years ago. Whenever I did my very first video, the producer did not like my little plastic bag taped to the side of the table. So I said, what am I supposed to do? And it's then that I started throwing my strips. Okay, I'm just going to turn my patches so that the background is at the top. I have my first dark, right side up. My patches are wrong side up, so I'm just going to slide them right over. Take your stiletto. Hold that seam flat. I know that we're fighting the seam right now, but we don't always fight the seam. It's every other time. Okay, I'm just going to butt it right up behind. No space in between. Keep that seam flat and just continue sewing straight down that strip until you have all of your corner pieces sewn on, as many as you need for your block. Looking good. Okay, let's just lay these out, and you've got them all in order, got them all identical. They'll all be right. Okay, take your 6-inch square up and use it as a square. Whoops, take that, get rid of it. Line this up right here and cut in between the 2 blocks, right where you butt them together. And if you didn't butt them closely, if there's a little space, you'll have to do a second bit of trimming. Okay, stack them up. We use this, get rid of it. Turn this stack over because you're going to set the seam with this first dark on top. Set the seam and just open and press and go right down through there. You know, I met Deanna Joplin in 1981. And she said the first thing she learned was that a quilt in a day is really 24 hours, not 8, but goes along quick anyways. Okay, this is what we have done already. We have the first and the first background and the first dark. Moving down, second one, I'm just going to put this strip underneath my sewing machine and we'll start to see a pattern. Turn the patches over. Every time you add a light, your dark corner square is in the upper left-hand corner. That's going to be a rule. You're going to start getting rules together here, and that's the first one to remember. Okay, line that up and just pick them up, butt them right close to each other, and just continue assembly line sewing. It's tricky in comparison to the regular log cabin because you use every color twice. This time, you use each fabric only once. Okay, that's done. It goes fast when you only have 3 blocks. And then once again, just lay that strip out. Make sure you have the strip flat on the table so it's not hanging over the end. Take that, trim that off, get rid of it. Well, when people watch my programs, they always say, makes them laugh when I throw my fabric. The next thing they say is, who picks up that fabric? Who picks up those scraps? And so it's really fun. Okay, I'm going to take that, get rid of it. Just take this, stack this up, turn that over. That second background strip is on the top. You're going to see the pattern coming here. Set the seam and just open and press right into it. Well, one of my other students wrote and told me that she didn't make her first quilt until she was 69 years old. So there's still hope for you. And she said she had a queen-size quilt done in a day and a half. Pretty good. Okay, moving down, you're going to do the second dark. And this is the next rule that I want you to remember. Go ahead and put your second dark right underneath there, that strip, and turn your patches over. This time, that dark corner is always going to be in the bottom left. So it just keeps on reversing, and you'll see how the strips continuously line right up beside each other. So now you're getting the idea. Well, this is fun to even teach to high school students. One of the teachers wrote, Aries Burgess, and she said she teaches high school students both boys and girls. And they find it so much fun to do. It gives them encouragement, and it teaches them the love of quilting, something that they're going to be able to do for the rest of their lives. Not only for high school students, but, elementary kids like it too. They've got those on there, and just lay that flat and cut it right apart. Now you can do it either way from either end. I'm just going to line it right up here, cut, get rid of that strip, but just cut it straight in between. The whole way down, put the ruler on the top if you want, until you get right down to the end. Take this, get rid of it. Stack these up, you've got it now. You can see how the system is going together. So the dark just goes on the top, set the seam, press it open, and you'll just continue these steps until you get clear out to the outside edge and you don't have anything left. Okay, once you do this one color family, the first color family, then just repeat it with the second color family. This is my reds, oh my cheery bright reds. And you line up these strips also with your background fabrics in the same order that I just did. And this is what that block looks like. The same thing with the backgrounds, the reds. Once you get the block done, you'll see how the seams all press flat right from that corner square out to the outside edge. And sometimes you get just a little flare in your blocks as you're going out. You might just have a little flare. So I like to take the 12.5-inch square up ruler, line it up with the diagonal line going right down along here. The block is approximately 12.5 inches square. And if you need to, just trim these two edges just to square them up. Well, let me get all 16 blocks done and I'll show you how to lay them out. Even though you've done tons of log cabin blocks before, the quarter log cabin blocks are just great fun. Well, I have all 16 done, 8 of each of them, and now comes the creative part. Just what layout will you choose for your blocks? Well, I'm going to start out and just lay out a simple pattern for you, the windmill. And you can do that with just 4 blocks. Now, this is a design wall. My son Orion put it up for me. It's a board covered with headliner fabric. It's the same fabric that they upholster the top of cars with. And then you can just put your fabric right on the headliner fabric, smooth it on there, and it stays in place. It's best if you put all of your blocks up, step back, take a look, try another layout, and just decide which one you like the best. Now, this works well in a group of 4. You create this large dark center right in the middle with your corner blocks. Now, I'm going to lay out the green blocks in groups of 4 as well. Mix them up, try some different layouts, and we'll decide which one we like the best. This is pinwheel with the reds and the greens in groups of 4. Mix the reds and greens in one pinwheel and you create a 4-patch center. Or place 4 green pinwheels in the very center and the 8 reds spin around the outside edge. Turn 2 reds and 2 greens in towards the center in groups of 4. Or I turned the 4 corners and the red star popped out. Place a pinwheel in the center of the star. Turn all the lights into the center and you create a pinwheel in that 5th background fabric. The possibilities are endless, but I decided to sew this one together. Orion and Sam designed this one, and Sam called it Texas Tornado because he sees the state of Texas in that light background. Well, when I sew my tops together, I like to sew vertical rows, top to bottom in all of the rows. Now, to do that, you start on the 2nd row in and flip it to the left. Okay, just line it up like that, the 1st block, the 2nd block, and keep on going the whole way down. And once you have the second row flipped to the first, then you stack from the top down. Keep the top blocks on the top. And then you just sew continuously in pairs. You don't cut them apart, but you open them up and add the third row and then the fourth. Let me sew my vertical rows together and I'll show you how to do it. This is what the quilt top looks like when it's sewn together in vertical rows. The blocks are actually held together with these connecting threads. These connecting threads are as good as pins. Now at this point it's helpful if you just lay it out, check it, make sure every block is in the right position because it's so much easier to unsew now. Then you go across the opposite direction, and when you flip it right sides together, just line up those blocks. Now in some of the blocks the seams lock, but in this particular layout the seams are going in the same direction. So I found it helpful to just put a pin right at each one of those intersections, and at the block space you take and you push them in opposite directions. And then I always like to keep the sewn rows on top so that I can pull it over here the next time I do the next side, then I can push that seam in the very same direction. Well, let me go ahead and finish this top, and I have some other beautiful quilts to show you. The Texas Tornado is now finished, and it will spin into history. Peggy Stenson did the machine quilting for me, and she put beautiful cabling in the border. You can see it even better on the back side. It's just wonderful. Well, I always teach test classes before I publish my books so that I'm sure that the yardage and the techniques work for you. These are the students' quilts made in my test classes. Well, Julia Markovitz cut up a bundle of fat quarters for this handsome lap robe. I just love the rich woodsy fabrics. Now she made 24 quarter log cabin blocks, 12 brown for the first color family, and then 12 blue for the second. And she used the extra 2.5-inch strips for the piano key border. Oh, and on the back, a woodsy flannel print with bears and trees. It's just a handsome quilt. Well, this is just Gloria Yankin's second quilt, and she did a beautiful job. Now, this is unique. She used satin for the corner squares, and what a tough time that was. Well, Gloria said she turned the block several different ways until this one suited her fine. Then she put a folded border. It just beautifully frames those gold and persimmon blocks. Really pretty. Now this one is out of reproduction prints. Nancy Letchworth used 1930s reproduction prints for this charming baby quilt. Just so cute. Now she used the same corner fabric for both color families. So you see those huge yellow squares in the center of the pinwheels. Now the backing is very cozy flannel. Look how cute, with sweet Scotty dogs with red bows. Well, Nancy did the large stippling on this quilt as well as quilting for Gloria and Julie. She was very busy. So if you're going to make your first strip quilt, or you've been stripping for 25 years, may your quilting bring you pleasure.